The TradFi media has been attacking the crypto industry for over a decade, calling us everything from terrorists to drug dealers, but in the past few years, they've been giving a small amount of airtime to some figures in traditional finance who are advocating for the industry. It's nice to finally get some acceptance from the establishment, but I still have a problem trusting some of these people who are claiming to speak for the industry, especially when all of their money was made in the old world, TradFi. Welcome to the channel, I'm your host BitBoy, and today we are getting deep. If you want your political, financial, and historical IQs to increase, watch this entire video. So Jim Kramer is probably the most popular financial reporter of the past few decades, but he's become a meme because of how many times he was horribly wrong, especially in crypto. The meme is the inverse Kramer. He's like a reverse indicator because he's so out of touch with the markets, but that's not really how I see it. I know he actually knows much more than people realize, and that it's literally his job to be wrong and lead people in whichever direction Wall Street decides. He's actually admitted as much. In a 2006 interview with an independent media channel called Wall Street Confidential, Jim Kramer went off script to describe a situation much like this, where hedge funds that he was involved with used their money to set massive sell orders so they sparked fear in the markets before calling up CNBC to plant a negative story about the stock they're trying to move. Then they would buy up the discounted stocks and call the media back up to reverse the narrative. Well, now, nearly 20 years later, Kramer has his own show on CNBC where he pushes retail investors in whichever direction the hedge funds want. Check out this clip of a younger Jim Kramer explaining how the media works for the financial establishment.
The great thing about the market is it has nothing to do with the actual stocks.
Right.
Now, look, over maybe 2 weeks from now, the buyers will come to their senses and realize that everything that they heard was a lie. But then again, Fannie Mae lied about their earnings for $6 billion. So,
right, and Bristol Myers lied.
It's just fiction and fiction and fiction. And I think it's important for people to recognize that the way that the market really works is to have that nexus of hit the brokerage houses with a series of orders that can push it down, then leak it to the press, and then get it on CNBC. That's also very important. And then you have a kind of a vicious cycle down.
Right.
And it's a pretty good game. And it can be played. You pay for a percent or two.
Right, and then do you get long before Macworld and the expectation that the iPhone is going to be
down.
good? Right, and then you go back,
you
flip to the long
certainly got to
side.
use the other side.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's a case where I would say the January 80 puts can be justified because after I've knocked the stock down to 80, I can buy a lot of common. And then you play it right into Macworld where they'll probably introduce the phone and Verizon's going to take it.
Kramer laid out the blueprint for us, but he was talking about something that is an industry standard. It's something that pretty much everyone does in that world, which is why he was so comfortable talking about it on camera. This blueprint is also followed by some of the most well-known influencers in crypto, the names that have been in finance or tech for decades. Talking about people like Cathie Wood, Michael Saylor, Larry Fink, Anthony Scaramucci, and others who make regular media appearances to talk about what's happening with Bitcoin or crypto. Normies who are just getting started think that these people are experts, so they will follow their advice. But what they're usually doing is becoming exit liquidity for the experts. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the term exit liquidity, but if you aren't, it's basically the idea that people who have been holding an asset for a while will want to create some excitement around that asset so they have people to sell to at a profit. This can end badly, especially on the short-term time horizon when the asset is already overpriced. But let's start with Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, one of the biggest financial institutions in the world. Now, I recently did a deep dive into BlackRock for our hedge funds video, but Larry Fink also individually sits on the board of many major companies, and he's also a member of many international organizations like the World Economic Forum and Council on Foreign Relations. Fink has been one of the driving forces behind the recent real-world asset hype wave. He's been all over the media talking about how RWA is the future and the next big thing.
The entire bond market is being transformed as we talk right now. I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. And if we could have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling, instantaneous settlement. And think about it, it changes the whole ecosystem.
He isn't doing this just because he likes to share his opinion or he likes to see himself on TV. He is intentionally planting information to move sentiment. BlackRock is now connected with RWA projects like BITL and Ondo, and his support for the RWA ecosystem was coincidentally timed just as those projects were being released to the public. In crypto, many of us are primed to be suspicious of Larry Fink, so we're going to be able to see the angle that he's working from a mile away. But it isn't always this obvious. Sometimes the facilitators can position themselves as allies or even true believers in the industry. Michael Saylor and Cathie Wood are great examples of this. Both of them made a lot of money in the traditional world before getting involved in crypto, but they have turned most of the attention to Bitcoin and crypto in recent years and have gained a lot of trust from different sectors of the industry. Between the two, Saylor is probably more ideologically invested in the industry and the technology, but he's still using the media as a tool to pump his own backs. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that Saylor has bought a large portion of his crypto with borrowed money. Still, he's mostly just self-interested. But with Cathie Wood, it's a bit different. She started her career with more connections than anyone could hope for because she was mentored by the famous economist Arthur Laffer, who was an advisor to President Ronald Reagan, an actor. He helped her land a job as an assistant economist at Capital Group. And within 3 years, she was moving to New York to become a chief economist for a firm associated with Prudential. She's been part of the Wall Street machine ever since, until the past few years, when she started to build a thesis around crypto, AI, and other advanced technologies. This is where things get a bit confusing because her overall thesis and her long-term view of the market is not much different from what I believe. However, the problem is that she goes on TV and gets people all bullish at the top of the market. She started to develop a bad reputation among retail investors for this too. A new report from Morningstar earlier this year said that Cathie Wood's firm ARK Invest lost more money for its investors than any other firm in the past 10 years, with $14.3 billion in losses for their investors. Anthony Scaramucci is another imposter from the traditional world who loves to sprinkle misinformation in the financial news cycles while appearing to be a friend of the industry. Didn't get the name Mooch for nothing.
We have some breaking news this morning from crypto exchange FTX. They're going to be taking a 30% stake in the crypto investment firm Skybridge Capital. Joining us right now is Anthony Scaramucci, Skybridge's capital founder and CNBC contributor, of course. Also, Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX founder and CEO, joining us this morning. Thank you both. It's nice to see you, Anthony. Congratulations on this investment.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Good morning, Sam. It's great to see Sam. And we're delighted about the transaction and think there's a very bright future for Skybridge and, of course, for FTX.
A lot of people were wrong about FTX, even a lot of good people in the industry. So that by itself doesn't necessarily mean that the Mooch is a total scammer, but he's definitely proven he can't be trusted. And whenever he goes on the news to talk about the industry, you need to assume he's putting out a narrative that is in the best interest of his firm, Skybridge Capital. He's not just casually sharing his opinion on things. That's something you need to remember with all of these financial news shows and the people that appear on them. There is always some kind of angle or agenda. Make sure you find it. That's all I got. Be blessed. BitBoy out.